I was in Nigeria for a few weeks, and a lot of people I met kept asking, how do I move to Canada? I mean, I understand they want to move out of the situation there, but the question they didn't really ask was, what is your experience living in Canada, or what should I expect? What is life like in Canada? So in this video, I want to share that, but I want to put it in a way where you can rethink or where you should reconsider moving to Canada. And I have about 5 to 6 of these points to help clarify things. Hopefully, I'm able to share it in a way that is understandable. The last point is going to be very important, so I urge you to stay till the end. Now, the first one is politics. The Canadian politics is very different, very, very different from the traditional politics we have in Nigeria. So in Nigeria, we often know like this is bad, this is good, this is the bad person here stealing, and this is the good person trying to help the people. The Canadian politics is very liberal. You know, it's not very traditional. We have a lot of like groups and rainbow flags and all of those things. So it's almost like a politics where they preach inclusiveness, and there might be some kind of divisiveness in the process. So it's not really like black and white. Even the conservatives are not conservative enough. They stay reserved. They don't like, it's not like American conservatives, or it's not like the Nigerian kind of traditionalist politics, if you know what I mean. I'm trying not to be disrespectful to any set of people or any group of people, but the politics in Canada is very different. Even in the House of Commons, the way they express themselves is almost a little bit dramatic compared to the kind of politics we see in Nigeria. So when you're moving to Canada, the implementations, the policies, all those things are going to be very different for you. If you're into politics, you'd find out in your first few weeks of living in Canada. The second point is taxation. Canadians pay a lot of taxes. I don't know how they cope with all of this, but they pay a lot of taxes. Everything is taxed. There's tax on tax. Like, it's too much. It's a lot of taxes. Even in Nigeria, when you buy something, the total cost of what you buy is what you pay at the counter. But in Canada, when you pick up like groceries or bread, let's say it's $1. When you go to the counter, it's going to be $1 plus the GST, the PST, and all other things. And then your taxes, the more you earn, the more they tax you for it. Your overtime, the more they tax you for it. So Canadians pay a lot of taxes. Some people don't really look into this, but your taxes make people earn less even when you're really earning more. I don't know if that makes sense, but Canadians pay a lot of taxes, and this might be something you might want to think about before moving to Canada. This, for some people just planning to move, just planning to relocate, it might be irrelevant to them right now. Eventually, when you start making money living outside of where you're coming from, you'd find out that taxes are very, very vital to look into. So yeah, Canadians pay a lot of taxes. Number three, the weather condition in Canada. The weather in Canada is it's very not predictable. I'll put it that way. You know, it can get very, very cold. It can get very, very hot. It can be very rainy if you live in the Vancouver area. As a matter of fact, Vancouver, the nickname for Vancouver is Raincouver. That's how much it rains here, and it's usually cloudy. It's sunny at like maybe 8 a.m. By 5 p.m. it's already cloudy. It's already very dark. I mean, that is in winter, but in the summer it's the direct opposite. It's sunny early and then gets dark very late, like 10 p.m. in the summer. So the weather is very, very unpredictable. So that might be a big change for you coming from like countries like Nigeria. I'm using Nigeria precisely because I was just there. So if you're coming from Nigeria, that experience will be different for you for sure. And because I think the sun comes out at like 6 a.m. in the morning and goes out at like 7 p.m. And it's like that all year round. But Canada is not really like that. So the weather, the snowy condition, the rainy condition, the windy condition could really affect you. They even have like a season where it's just a depression season. A lot of people go into depression during these seasons, which is usually around the fall and winter season. They have a flu season. That's something I never heard until I came to Canada. So the weather is really something you might want to reconsider, or you might want to think about before moving to Canada. Anyways, the third point or the fourth point right now is housing. So an average house price for Canadians living in Vancouver is about, I think the last time I heard was $1.5 million. And this is not for like the best houses. Like, this is like the very basic house is like $1.5 million, which is a lot. A lot of people have given up on buying houses. Like, most Canadians will just be like, I'll just rent. Like, they've given up on buying houses. If you want to buy a house, maybe Alberta might be a place for you to go, but even Alberta is a little bit expensive compared to other places. If you took the money you wanted to use to buy a house in Canada, if you took it to like Texas, you'd be buying a mansion. So as far as buying a house, you might not, some people have given up. I mean, Canadians, I'm not even talking about foreigners. A lot of Canadians have given up on buying houses in Canada because of the cost of housing. And this is because they have very low supply of houses but high demand. And that has risen the price by a lot. Even the rent is very expensive. I know I just spoke about just housing, but renting a house is very expensive. You're getting rent between like $2,000 to like $3,000 and even more, So you might want to think about things like that before moving to Canada. And if you're moving to Canada, try to keep a lot of money with you so you don't surprise yourself when you're here. Otherwise, you'll live on the streets. That's the simple truth. And the third thing is, sorry, I keep saying the third. The fifth point now is healthcare. So healthcare, people often run with free healthcare in Canada. People often run with that, but that's not the full story. When you give out food for free, people tend to eat a lot more because it's free. That's the same thing happening within the Canadian healthcare system. It's free, so a lot of people just look around looking for the very, they're not really sick. They're just there to like, oh, I have headache. Oh, this has happened to me. Oh, I tripped when I was walking, climbing upstairs. I need healthcare. And there's so much line that people that actually need the real help don't get it immediately. So it's delayed healthcare, even though it's free. I don't know if that makes sense. So the healthcare is free, but it's very delayed. When it gets to you, it's going to take some time, and it's not entirely free. It's not completely free. You should also keep that in mind. So yeah, the healthcare system is really, it's a pro, but also a very big con. You might want to keep that in mind. Again, keep that in mind. And second to the last point, third to the last point is exclusivity. When people move to Canada, especially immigrants, when immigrants move to Canada, they don't really mix. So there's a lot of like different groups, even political groups, where you can see let's say the Chinese come, they stay together, the Indians come, stay together, Nigerians come, they stay together. And even like some of the groups that were formed in, should I say, politics or whatever it might be, like you can see the LGBTQ community, they stay together. The Pakistani community, they stay together. Like, it's just groups. So they don't really blend together. It's not like a community or a cultural, should I say, emergence of different people. It's just groups. So it's very exclusive. And if you don't find your group, you might feel left out. I think that's the best way to put it. So yeah, think about that when you're coming. It's very exclusive. Second to the last point, Canadians work very hard. I just told you about the taxes, and I also told you about the housing. And with that, Canadians have to do like 2-3 jobs to meet up. So they work very hard. I know they say like places in Japan, they work a lot harder. I don't know, I've never been to Japan, but Canadians work very, extremely hard. It might not make any sense. You might think I sound like a lazy person to say Canadians work hard, but when you come here, you'd realize that Canadians really work hard. They work a lot harder than you might think. I've worked in like 2 countries. I worked in Nigeria, obviously, and it wasn't as hard as working in Canada. I can tell you that for free. So you better be ready for that. And the last and most important point, I don't think Canada needs any more people. I think that's the best way to put it. That's the last point, and it's the most important point. I don't think it needs any more people, especially if you think about things like housing. The provision for housing is not sufficient for the people living in Canada. So imagine you now coming to Canada. You're going to raise the demand and making it more expensive. And this is not just supply on houses, it's supply on some other things, like some other resources. It's not sufficient for the people living here. So you can see even the government trying to regulate this with their new immigration policies. They try to regulate the people coming in. They need skilled workers, no doubt, but they don't need everybody coming in. So I don't think Canada at this point, I mean, I'm an immigrant, so I don't discourage my immigration. I'm not like anti-immigration, but I'm just saying I don't think Canada needs any more people at this point. So you might want to think about that. and for this reason it might be harder for you to migrate to Canada, because people would the people at the embassy would stop your visa, or they might stop your visa because they're not looking for everybody. It might be a lot harder, a lot more difficult for you to get your visa or your express entry or permanent residence, whatever, or however you're applying. It's going to be a lot more difficult because Canada right now is not really looking for many people anymore. There's so much they have to deal with in-house already. Anyways, those are all the points I just came up with. I was just sitting down thinking about, like, just reflecting on my visit to Nigeria and why a lot of people wanted to move and people weren't asking the right questions. Everybody's like, how do I move to Canada? What did you do to move to Canada? Will I get a job in Canada? Blah blah blah, like all those things. But people weren't really asking, how is life in Canada? What will it be like when I move to Canada? Like, they were not asking the right questions. So I thought to make this video for those people. It's not for everybody. Now, it's a beautiful place to live. Like, I feel like this is the obvious part, because if you wanted to move to Canada, you know already that is a very beautiful place to live. Like, that's the obvious part. The part I'm telling you is the not so obvious part. Anyway, share your thoughts. If there's anything you want to add, critique, correct, feel free to do so in the comment section. Smash the like button, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.